we can actually kick off officially the work of this afternoon and the conference by giving the floor to President Enrico Letta, former Prime Minister of Italy, now leading the Italian Democratic Party, but today with us with another casquette, that of President of the Jacques Delors Institute. We are very glad to have you here. President Letta, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you all for being with us. It's a great pleasure for me to give the kickoff and to say a few words on such a topic. It's not by chance that the Jacques Delors Institute is part of this today's event and is part of this exercise with FEPS. And I would like to say hello to Maria João Rodrigues and to all the leading team at FEPS with Laszlo Andor. It is not by chance, I was saying, because Jacques Delors was someone who always was convinced about the importance of la formation tout au long de la vie. Adult learning was, since the beginning of his activity as president of the European Commission, one of the main missions that he had in mind. Unfortunately, for many reasons, he didn't succeed to have some results, important results on this topic. He succeeded to have results on other topics related to education or related to social rights. But on this topic, finally today, 35 years later, we are able to reach some important achievements. And I was saying it is not by chance, because today the European Union is living a fantastic time of relaunch and recovery in social terms and in education terms. And this idea made by Jacques Delors, la formation tout au long de la vie, the idea of mixing education and social pillar all together in something that is today crucial in this period, in this very period of transitions at global level and at European level, transitions that are creating anxieties and that are creating changes in the professional life of all the workers and the people around the continent. We are mixing two topics, two issues, two fields that were not so much important at the beginning of the European integration and even in the period of Jacques Delors, because education and the social pillar were at the margins of the European, of the day by day, the normal European life. Jacques Delors, in the period, in the 10 years in which he was president of the Commission, he created the internal market, the 5 freedoms, and on education, he was the father of Erasmus. But we know very well that at that time, because of vetoes and because of the idea that any social accomplishment and any education achievement were something negative for some countries, or first of all for one country, the UK, that vetoed always any steps but Erasmus, and that was, I think, a great achievement of Jacques Delors at that time. But for the rest, the UK vetoes were so crucial and were the rule. Today, maybe also because of Brexit, but we are living in a new world at European level, in a world in which, thanks to the great achievements of the Porto Summit early this year, the Portuguese presidency under the leadership, the enlightened leadership of Antonio Costa, and big important achievements under the leadership of Nicolas Schmit, the commissioner who will take the floor in a few minutes, the European Union today is creating a social pillar and starting having some important results where it was impossible to do so decades ago, or even years ago, even before the pandemic. So this is why I'm really delighted to say that today is a sort of revenge of Jacques Delors. It is a sort of great success of his idea, and it is the right timing to have such a seminar, because we are very close to a moment in which the European Commission will launch an important perspective on this adult training perspective. And it is the correct timing also for another reason, and I will stop immediately. And the reason is related to the fact that with today's world sustainability missions, we are experiencing many changes in the job market. And these changes are changing also the way in which people are working and in which jobs are developing their way to be a part of, essential part of people's life. This is why these changes are related also to the need for people to be trained in their adult age. And it is not easy. In many countries, it is not usual to do so. My country is one of them. And this is why the impulse of the European Commission is so important. The work, the paper that David mentioned minutes ago, it's an important contribution. And I'm sure that this paper will help Nicolas Schmit in his fantastic work. So I stop here. David, give you the floor immediately with Klervi. You will present the contribution by the Jacques Delors Institute and FEPS. This contribution is a crucial accomplishment. I'm sure that it will help the European Union and the European Commission in this fantastic and very important mission. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Letta. As you correctly stated, we have about 10 minutes with Klervi Kerneïs, Research Assistant for Social Affairs at the Jacques Delors Institute and author of the studies, together with Sofia Fernandez, who was our lead researchers for the project, to present and condense in 10 minutes the main results, the main takeaways from this study. We can move directly to the next slide, because this one is just to stress that what is our main objective is to push and make people understand that to give real bite to the European pillar of social rights when it comes to education, a real right to education for all European, all adult at any age and in any condition, is still yet to be realized, and individual learning accounts can be a good way to implement that. This is why we will spend the rest of the presentation with a little introduction on what are the big macro challenges around the skills agenda, and specifically try to identify why the individual learning account matters. Thanks to the research done by Klervi and Sofia, we are also able to try to give some guidelines and instructions on how individual learning accounts can be made effective. And lastly, we will try to also propose a way in which individual learning accounts at national level can be made really European. So that would be the real European content of a potential proposal. What we have in front of us is a double challenge. So from one side, as President Letta has correctly stressed, we have an increasing demand, an increasing need for reskilling, upskilling. Somehow we have more need to provide adults in different moments of their life with training and formative opportunities. We mentioned here we have the acceleration of megatrends, digitalization, the ecological transition, and as you all know, there are more and more changes in the life patterns of people and workers, so that we might need over time to change career or to readapt to changing labor markets. If you ask to any business, actually what they stress is they need a more adaptable workforce. And another important thing that I'm quite sure you're all familiar with is the skills mismatch, particularly from the European Union, has been underlined many times. And there's a shortage of workers and competence in certain particular areas, for instance, nursing or IT skills. But for progressives in particular, I think the need to reskill displaced workers is even one of the greatest and more necessary things to consider, because the digital and green transitions will not have the same impact on all people and on all regions. So we will have to make sure that from industry to industry and area to area, adult learning system will be able to support people in their employability. But the other challenge, besides the growing need for adult learning, is also facing a system that at the moment is really not able to deliver as it should be. So we have to increase the demand while changing the way in which adult learning is done at the moment. So not more of what we are used to, but changing what we have and expanding it in large. There is a big misalignment with the needs of the labor market and the type of formative opportunities we give to the adults. Quality is indeed a big issue, and there is a crucial lack of coverage and inclusiveness. Somehow, in the end, we will see it in a second in one single slide. Those that need training the most are not the ones that receive it. So that is the policy challenge that we would like everybody to understand and understand the scale of it. Please, Klervi. In this slide, in just 1 second, you can see also how ambitious has been the Commission and Commissioner Schmit in particular, because the target that we had on 50% of participation in adult learning has now been pushed up to 60% till 2030 as a part of the action plan implementing the social pillar. The pillar of social rights. At the moment, though, the average we can compute it with data up to 2016 is around 38%, and not even the best performing European country, Sweden, is at the 60% ratio. So we want that on average in Europe by 2030 we arrive at the 30%. There's a lot of work to be done there in many European countries. And the work that we need to be done, we can go to the next slide. It has to be particularly targeted or somehow particularly able to deliver on the inclusivity of formative opportunities. In this slide, you can see for different categories, for different characteristics of workers, the difference between the low skills and the high skills that are taking up adult learning opportunities, from 23% to 65% as well. And those with elementary occupation and managers, another very big difference. Of course, the problem of arriving at this 60% for Europe as a European average, it's not impossible if we look at high-skilled managers, young and employed people. But if you look at the unemployed, at the older people, at people with elementary occupation or low skill, that is where policy design has failed so far, and where it needs to be redirected. That's why we think that the individual learning accounts are a crucial tool to reverse a little bit the the narrative and let people understand that it's in their own right and in their own benefit to go for lifelong learning. We have to create demand from the side of the people. We need to give them the right, because at the moment, up to 80% of those that are not doing adult education, they are convinced that they actually don't need it. So we have a big problem there, that people still are convinced that they wouldn't benefit from it. And those instead, the 20% that would love to do it but are not doing it, they somehow blame lack of time, lack of money, and family occupations as reasons not to do it. So we think that individual learning accounts can be a change of mindset. So they can completely transform this idea of perceiving education as a lifetime matter. Not only as in the initial phase of everybody's life. Two others big characteristics that we want to highlight is that individual learning accounts are by default, if you want, universal for all workers, and workers defined in a very broad way, so including all informal work and the non-standard contract, and they have to be essentially portable, in the sense that it doesn't matter how many times you change job, doesn't matter what type of career you have. If you move from one place to the other, you still accumulate your right, and you still can use them in different moments of your professional life. Universality, portability, and the possibility of changing the story in the mind of the European people. Klervi, you have the floor.
Thank you, David. Indeed, we think that individual learning accounts presents many benefits, but if they are to fulfill their purpose, they have to be well designed as well. And this is where the EU has a key role to play in guiding member states' action based on lessons learned from national experiences in the EU and beyond. And this is why in our report we asked the Commission to propose a recommendation setting such guidelines. So basically it would be national schemes, national ELAs, so that it can leave room to national specificities, and also so that people can take really ownership of the scheme, but at the same time having guidelines at European level to ensure a coordinated approach. So we identified several guidelines, but I will focus on 3 today and try to go through them as quickly and clearly as possible. The first one, as David said, the most important one is making sure that these schemes are inclusive. And this means that even though they are universal, they have to include specific provisions for those who need training the most. So this can be done through additional financial support, of course, and I think I would insist also on training leave that include income replacements. However, financial support is not sufficient, and we need to make sure that people are aware that they have training rights. And so this can be done obviously through a dedicated website and application, but also I think for those groups through the work of trade unions, as well as in some cases even a civil society organization that can really reach out to those groups. Guidance obviously is the main issue. And it should fully integrate comprehensive skill assessment and validation, which gives visibility to the skill that people have acquired in informal or non-formal settings. The second guideline I wanted to present was the quality and the relevance of the training offered. First, the quality, I think, should be tackled both upstream of the training, meaning through a certification system to make sure that the trainings are high quality trainings, but also downstream through public monitoring, but also through peer review systems that can be really useful so that people make sure that the training really truly match their needs. And the second side of the story, let's say, is the relevance of the training, because the risk is that people develop skills that are not useful for the labor markets of today, but also of tomorrow. So the first step is skill anticipation, which means the forecasting of skill needs. And this needs to be done at all levels, so not just European, but also local, national, regional, sectoral, and involving all actors. But even if we do identify those in-demand skills, we need to make sure that people choose those trainings, but we cannot oblige them, because individual learning accounts are about empowering people. So I think the guidance, again, would be a good solution, but we also thought of this flexible top-up system, which is also in place in France with the French scheme, the compte personnel de formation, which can be used to incentivize people to take a particular training, for instance, to tackle existing skill shortages like ICT specialists, or even skills necessary for the transition, green transition. And my last guideline would be the fact that the link between individual learning accounts and existing programs and existing funds. And I think my main message here would be that these schemes are not supposed to be one blanket, new isolated instruments. It's supposed to be built upon the existing broader adult learning ecosystem, involving all the stakeholders, not replacing the role of companies as learning places. And this can also be done through these top-up systems, because existing funds can be obviously used in this regard, and even EU funds can be used to top up people's accounts. And this would also give visibility to those funds by clearly labeling and advertising European co-financing, for instance, of the European Social Fund or the Just Transition Fund. Lastly, I will say that my last point would be the fact that we need to ensure that the mobility between EU countries does not result in a loss of the rights that people have acquired. And for this, we have proposed a 3-step approach to guarantee the portability of training rights, basically across countries. Firstly, through online training, which would be the easiest solution, but also the possibility of training entitlements, and on the longer term, the setting up of European individual learning accounts. So I will finish with a quick quote from Jacques Delors, who has been calling for rights to training for each worker since the beginning of his career in the 60s, and here also in the 90s when he was president of the European Commission. And I think on these words, I would like to welcome and introduce Commissioner Schmit, who is Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights, and who has kindly accepted our invitation to talk about European ambitions on lifelong learning, and I think he will be connected shortly, if not now.
If we have a second more while Commissioner Nicolas Schmit joins us, we can show again his rights.
No, he's there. Thank you so much, Commissioner Schmit, for joining us today. I will give you the floor. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Schmit, you have the floor.
I have immediately the floor. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. First, I'm very happy to attend your online conference towards an individual right to adult learning for all Europeans. I think that your conference is indeed very timely, in the way that yesterday the Education Council had a very important debate on adult learning, how to promote adult learning. And we are about to present our proposal on individual learning accounts. So this fits perfectly with your conference and also the different contributions made on one hand by FEPS and by the Foundation for European, by the Foundation, Delors Foundation. So again, also thank you to the Jacques Delors Institute for all you do on Social Europe. I think this is very important also for our own action, and especially what you have done on the individual learning account. So I read your report. I read also the document you prepared together with FEPS. We all here at the Commission, we are very much attached also to, I would say, the Delors legacy on what he did for the European integration, but especially also the social dimension of the European integration. So I think this is also something we like very much to be related to, and especially also his efforts. Also, I remember his life and his engagement, his commitments at different levels for lifelong learning, insisting always a lot on the way on the contribution of lifelong learning, that indeed this is the way for people, for workers, to get more autonomous and to have a better evolution in their professional careers. So I think this is something we are very much relating to, and therefore also the Commission President, in her political guidelines for this Commission, considered that the best investment in our future is the investment in people. And obviously, when she said we need to change the culture of education towards lifelong learning that enriches us all, this is very much in line with the ideas of Jacques Delors. Now, as an inspiration, we already have an individual right to adult learning for all Europeans, because the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU states that everyone has the right to education and to have access to vocational and continuing training. And this also is an integral part of the European Pillar of Social Rights, proclaimed, well, nearly exactly 4 years ago in Göteborg. And its principle one of the pillar establishes precisely the right to education, to training, to lifelong learning. And principle 4 on the right to training and requalification as an active support to employment. And principle 5, which states that workers have the right to training regardless of the type and duration of the employment relationship. This shows that the Pillar of Social Rights puts training, skilling, upskilling, education in the center of social policies, but also of employment policies, how we shape the world of work of today and of tomorrow. Unfortunately, we are still quite far away from the implementation of these rights, because adult learning participation is far from the objective we have set. We see that participation in training is not only too low, but also very unequal. We have only half of employees of large companies that who have participated in training during the last year. For SMEs, this figure is largely below 50%, around 42%. But also the participation in member states is very diverse. When we compare now the efforts made by member states to our target of 60% by 2030, meaning that 60% of the workers should participate at least once in a year at a reskilling or skilling or upskilling course. This objective is more or less achieved in Sweden with 58%, in the Netherlands 57%, but in Romania we are less than 6%, Bulgaria 11.8%, and Greece at 16%. So we see that there are enormous gaps now between member states when we compare the levels of participation of workers in lifelong learning. And we see that this reflects also in a way the level of the economy, the development of the economy, but it shows also that we need this upward convergence, which has to be economic, obviously, but which also has to be social. And here, training is extremely important. Making the right to lifelong learning a reality for all is not only a European social and fundamental right, it is also a smart economic investment. However, constraints still exist. Many employers still report difficulties in finding candidates with the right skills, and we noticed today with the labor shortages that we have on one hand still relatively high levels of unemployment, and on the other hand, labor shortages affecting a certain number of sectors, and especially digital vacancies are quite huge. We estimate that something around 1 million vacancies in digital jobs for which we do not have the rightly skilled people. So we have to help individuals to take part in learning. A lack of time and the cost of training are important obstacles for individuals. There is also a question of mindset. This has also been identified in your report. Mindset, because people consider that lifelong learning is not interesting for them or useful for them. So there is still a significant scope to encourage training participation. In a 2020 survey carried out by CEDEFOP, for instance, 9 out of 10 adults said that training that is better adapted to their learning needs would motivate them to take up learning opportunities. So people expect something from their training participation, so there has to be a training culture in the companies, showing also that professional developments for workers is very much linked to better training opportunities and using these opportunities. We need to take a fresh look at how to tackle these challenges. We need public authorities in the member states to step efforts to fostering skills development. First, when it comes to investments, member states on average invest 4.6% of GDP in education and training overall, but only 0.5% of their GDP goes towards developing adults' skills. And this is obviously not enough. So we have to enhance reskilling and upskilling. And I noticed, by the way, that in the Next Generation EU and the Recovery and Resilience Funds, member states or certain member states use more money, use more funding for skilling and reskilling. The EU can contribute to turning aspirations into reality, firstly through the ambitious targets set by the European Pillar of Social Rights, this famous 60%. I think this is a new incentive. This should change also public policies, but also having an impact on the behavior of companies. Secondly, the EU also can contribute through funding. I referred already to the Recovery and Resilience Facility, where a certain number of member states use this financial facility also to invest in reskilling. And obviously, it is important also to use the European Social Fund Plus to invest in reskilling and to build up better reskilling or lifelong learning systems. A third element is EU policy action. So the European Skills Agenda, adopted in July 2020, set a 5-year plan to tackle the skills challenges in 12 actions, and they aim to further strengthen collective action on skills development, mainly through the Pact for Skills. And the Pact for Skills is a pact which should cover the whole spectrum of the European economy with its 14 ecosystems. It should involve public actors like member states, but also regions or local authorities, but it should also involve private companies, trade unions, social partners, and skills providers. So we have to ensure that skills are aligned with labor market needs. And here, vocational training is certainly one of a very important tool to promote this, or better to say, to improve the matching between labor market and skilling and training. And in that spirit, we have adopted a training recommendation on the action on skills intelligence. But how to empower also individuals to acquire new skills? Now, I think this next week, the Commission will adopt a proposal for a Council recommendation on micro-credentials and individual learning accounts that will be put forward, and which is also part of this EU policy response to further develop an enabling environment to help individuals upskill and reskill. Now, coming to the individual learning accounts, this will support member states to empower individuals and make the individual right to adult learning tangible for them through a combination of financial support for training and other types of support. And here I insist very much on career guidance. I think this has to be a very important part accompanying the individual learning accounts. The other element is validation. That's what we try to achieve through the Council recommendation on micro credentials, and transparency about training opportunities, where quality is also key. We have to make sure that the accessible training opportunities have been guaranteed in terms of quality, because this is also an important issue for individuals. They have to be be ensured that if they are investing, and here with the individual accounts, it's their money, the quality of their training or skilling is of good quality. Individual learning account does not mean shifting all the responsibility for up and reskilling on the individuals themselves. Certainly, we still have the responsibility of the companies, but we give, what is important is we give the individual worker also a right to choose his or her reskilling or upskilling. We have to organize in a way a collective action on skills to support all working age adults, regardless of whether they are employed or not, and giving a strong voice to people's own interests and aspirations. And we have more and more also people who want to change their job, their orientation, their professional orientation. Well, you cannot ask your former or your present employer to finance or to participate in the financing of your professional reorientation. So this is your own responsibility, but it is also important for people to be capable of managing their own mobility. And I think in this spirit, the individual accounts are extremely important to give people the right on their own mobility, especially if they want to be upskilled or just reskilled. So if they want to have a professional life in a different with a different orientation. So the culture, and I mentioned already, the culture of lifelong learning has to be promoted, and this is mainly important also in a period of big economic transformation. Companies are changing. Companies change their business models. Companies integrate new technologies, new products, and need new skills. So I think we have really to encourage this culture of lifelong learning, of skilling and upskilling at the level of companies. And but there can be some kind of cooperation with, on one hand, the worker, and on the other hand, the company to manage this retraining, and also to manage or to at least to facilitate the cost sharing at the level of retraining, cost sharing between public and private actors, but also cost sharing in a way between the individual worker who may choose new orientations and the company. So I think, especially in the context of green and digital transition, this instrument of the individual learning accounts is extremely important. It supports again the possibility for bigger mobility on the labor market. It has also to be linked to another issue, which is extremely important, which is working time. So the question is, how is working time and the time dedicated to being skilled and reskilled organized? So I think this is an issue which you are mentioning in your paper, and I think there is also, if we want to motivate, if we want really to convince people that they have to be part of lifelong learning, working time and learning time is a serious element. So I expect now the adoption of this instrument. It's a recommendation this next week. It's a council recommendation. We will have discussions in the council, and I hope that it can be adopted relatively rapidly in order to convince those member states who do not yet have these instruments, because we see that a certain number of member states have already introduced this individual learning accounts. It's obviously France, but I think there's a similar initiative in the Netherlands. There's a few other countries who have opted for this instrument. I just met the Greek Minister of Education, who confirmed that Greece has also introduced such an instrument. So it's up then to those who have not yet adopted this instrument to proceed to this adoption, and those who have adopted the instrument perhaps to improve it, to adjust it to the different challenges and needs, and also especially in the context of digital and green transition. Let me conclude now with a quote by Jacques Delors from your report that summarizes very well the stakes and challenges. Delors said that the provision of equal opportunities is one of democracy's most noble and yet most demanding promises. In Europe, the ability of countries to keep this promise varies tremendously, but equal opportunities begin with equal access to education. So again, education is key. Competencies, skills are key in the transformation of the world of work. It's essential for also the changes in our economy, the competitiveness in our economy, and therefore I think the learning accounts respond to an important right, an equal access, but also can become an important tool for improving the functioning of our companies and so of our economy at large. So thank you very much, and I again congratulate you for having this conference on this important topic, and we certainly follow this with great interest.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Schmit, and good afternoon, everybody. I have the privilege to take over the moderation of this event. My name is François Balat from FEPS. And again, thank you, Commissioner Schmit, for highlighting, first of all, the importance of the legacy of Jacques Delors, and also presenting the various initiatives that the EU is putting in place to address the challenges that are highlighted in the FEPS Institute Jacques Delors report. I think one of the main and striking elements of your intervention is that with all this, if we overcome this challenge, we have the opportunity to create again a sense of purpose at work for millions of people, and this can only be beneficial for the society we are trying to rebuild now and for democracies. So again, thank you very much, Commissioner. Now we are moving to the next phase of our event with a high-level talk on the European ambitions for a lifelong learning agenda and its implication for policy action, building on the keynote from Commissioner Schmit. And I have the pleasure to welcome for this discussion Tuula, the Minister for Employment of Finland, and Alicia, member of the European Parliament and President of the Young European Socialists. So for these two distinguished speakers, I will first give them the floor for introductory input, and then I will come up with a follow-up question. And first and foremost, welcome to both of you. Thank you for being part of this event. And I will immediately give the floor to Minister Haatainen for your introduction. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear Chair, dear friends, Commissioner Schmit. Thank you for organizing this important discussion, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present Finnish views on lifelong learning, as well as our experiences on the policy actions we find relevant in this field. Our government is reforming the continuous learning in Finland, focusing on skills of working age people. The reform will respond to the educational needs arising from changes in the world of work, and also seek solutions to combine work and study. The changing demands of work will significantly increase the need for upskilling and continuous learning. The term continuous learning was introduced in Finland to emphasize the importance of purposeful upskilling and reskilling. As in many other countries, our labor market urgently needs highly skilled workers. People in high-skilled jobs are also the ones who most actively express that they need and want to develop their skills continuously. Learning opportunities are becoming a competitive asset. Demographic changes also create new challenges. Our workforce is aging fastest in, I think, in the world, in Finland, and it is increasingly more important to us to make sure that everyone's skills are up to date so that people can find and keep their jobs and place in the work market. Immigration introduces also new different groups of people to the work market. Some of them possess advanced skills that we should take into use as swiftly as possible. At the same time, some lack proper basic education and even the ability to read and write. Also, we have ambitious goals on raising the employment rate. Although we are on the right path, the supply of skilled workers is still key to meeting our targets. So it seems that lifelong learning can help us to overcome a number of changes. The vision and objectives of the Finnish reform are following. First, everyone develops their skills and competence during their careers. Everyone needs to have a chance to develop in their work, find a new job, and advance their careers. We also aim at more equitable participation. Second, everyone has the knowledge, competence, and skills required for employment and the meaningful life. And thirdly, competence renews the world of work, and the world of work renews competence. Skilled labor force supports also sustainable growth, as we know, innovation, competitiveness, and it means well-being. In addition, workplace communities advocate and support learning new things. The measures envisaged by the parliamentary reform include increasing opportunities for the retraining, also continuing professional development and professional specialization education throughout working life, developing apprenticeship training as a channel for reskilling and adult education, and providing also flexible opportunities to study in higher education institutions. Study leave and financial aid for adult students will be developed also, and the opportunities for people to study while looking for work will be improved. This challenge requires a comprehensive and systematic approach for developing education and learning, taking into account many policy sectors. Also, education systems will also need to cooperate more closely with working life. One of the key questions is how non-formal and informal learning can be more efficiently used in skills development and the learning outcomes made also visible. The education system and its financing and guidance will be developed to better support learning in the workplace. In addition, common principles will be set out for recognizing prior learning acquired outside formal education. Also, services will be created to facilitate lifelong guidance. These services will also focus on supporting groups that are currently underrepresented in adult education. So lifelong learning is not just a right, it is a necessity. That is why I think it is a shared responsibility of the state, also social partners, and the individual to make lifelong learning possible, and at the same time to build a better future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for highlighting the various initiatives taken by the Finnish government and what the strategy ahead. Maybe if I made one or two questions to further dig into that. Finland's starting point is quite already comfortable because you have already more than 50% of your population age 25-64, which is engaged in adult learning, and then congratulations for the effort already made on that point. But is there a specific element you would like to highlight that explain this success? And then maybe a more challenging question is that regardless of this performance, there is a similar objective which you touched upon, obstacle which you touched upon in your introductory remark, is making sure that everyone gets access to these opportunities. If you could maybe elaborate a bit more on the strategies that are put in place to reach the most at-risk groups. You have mentioned the partnership with the education institutions, non-formal, informal. If you would like to elaborate a bit more on that and provide us with some guidance there. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. The first one, it is not so much question of specific targeted policy programs, but the fact that the development of the population's competencies have been taken into account in the education system everywhere. So and also employment services and regulations. So and I would emphasize also that Finnish people appreciate education widely throughout the society. So this is some kind of atmosphere also in my country. In Finland, the focus is to develop and maintain also very low threshold education offerings that is open easily and accessible to the entire adult population. So public funds are used to maintain a comprehensive network of liberal adult education institutions in municipalities, and there is a diverse range of education, and above all, it is low cost, so it is easily reached by people. Adult general upper secondary schools also offer similar types of study opportunities, and Finland has very long tradition to participate in these studies. In addition, efforts have been made to increase the offer of open modules for higher education institutions, such like universities and universities of applied sciences. And these are also very popular among people in working life and also among retired people. In addition, there is a large variety of online studies possible to people. Finland's labor legislation and labor market agreements also support the education and training of the working population in both the public and private sector, and the agreements of the social partners, they include, for example, clauses on the right of employees to training during an employment relationship or in redundancy situations. For employees, it is important to be able to apply for and receive study leave from work. Also, the change security model supports those made redundant and provides them with opportunities for training that supports re-employment. And at the moment, a legislative amendment is currently underway to give a subjective right to education that supports over 55 years old people who have been given notice their professional skills and their re-employment, and it is equivalent to the 2-month wage bill. Employers themselves also pay for their personnel in service training related to the development of changes of their operations. In some situations, the central government may also finance training together with the employers, joint procurement training for labor market training. Also, job seekers can take part in labor market training or apply for studies while maintaining their unemployment benefit, either as full-time or part-time self-motivated studies. So this is the variety of possibilities in short. And then the second question about the risk groups. So for this question, we are now starting in Finland a new service center for continuous learning and employment in my country, in Finland. And the tasks of this new service center are specifically related to improve the educational opportunities of the working age population, especially those underrepresented, those that are underrepresented in education. It means, for example, that the contents and implementation forms of vocational and tertiary education offer are made more flexible and also tailored to better meet the needs of the target groups. The aim is also to increase the supply of study modules that complement existing qualifications so that people can update their skills and in accordance with the changing demands of the labor market. In addition, support forms available for securing the income during studies must be developed. In Finland, this work is currently being carried out as part of the more extensive preparations for the social security reform. Furthermore, it is necessary to examine more broadly how the responsibility for education costs in society is divided. What is the responsibility of the public sector, central government, companies, and other employers, or the individuals as a whole for competence development? So this is the discussion that we have to go through. This is not ready yet.
Thank you very much, Minister, for providing us with more elements about what is being done in Finland, what are part of the current success, but also what is coming ahead for you in your upcoming reforms. And I'm now transitioning to our next speaker. We'll come back to you with maybe questions from the audience afterward. But now I would like to give the floor to MEP Alicia Holmes, who happens also to be the president of the Young European Socialists, coming from Finland, where there's a strong youth sector. I think it's a good segue to Alicia to take the floor. Alicia, thank you for being with us, and you have the floor for your introduction.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for giving me the floor, Francois. And of course, thank you all for inviting me to this interesting event, which, as Commissioner said, is held in a very timely moment, I must say. So I will try to be brief in order to have an open discussion also with the audience. So I think that we are all aware that the fast shift towards the climate neutral Europe and the digital transformation, as well as the aging of Europe's population, are three major drivers of change that can already be seen to be upon us and that are changing the way we work, the way we learn, the way we take part in society, and also the way we lead our everyday lives. So all these transitions have an immense potential, as we know, to boost productivity and improve well-being for all. But they also represent a significant challenge for our societies, and more particularly for the labor markets across the European Union, because they affect sectors and firms differently and exacerbate qualification gaps and inequalities between workers, between firms, and also between generations. Moreover, the COVID-19 pandemic has also had a deep impact on millions of people in the European Union who have lost their jobs or who experienced important income loss. So many will need to acquire new skills to keep their jobs, or will need to move to new jobs in a new different sector. So for young people, entering in the labor market is extremely difficult right now. So here is where the education, the training, and the lifelong learning will play a key role in maintaining and acquiring those skills that will enable people to manage and, in the end, to overcome these major transitions, as is set up, as Commissioner also said, in the principle number 1 of the European Pillar of Social Rights. Key competencies are crucial in the knowledge society and in a lifelong learning context, as they guarantee more flexibility in adapting to changing societies and labor markets. But let's think, for instance, that according to the European Commission, it is estimated, this is an estimation more or less, that 30% of jobs in the European Union will disappear over the next 25 years, to be replaced, for sure, by jobs requiring advanced skills in the digital sector. And let's think also that it is also estimated that 65% of children entering primary school today will ultimately end up working in completely new job types that does not exist yet. So in this context, I think it's clear that the development and the strengthening of digital, green, and horizontal also skills through education, training, and lifelong learning will play a key role with regard to the just transition and this digital and green economy. However, we cannot forget that the capacity to adapt and to be resilient is not distributed equally. So there are socioeconomic, gender, age, geographic, and accessibility aspects which have to be taken also into account in this sense. So if we do not do it, we could run the risk of creating the perfect breeding ground for populist or extremist responses. So we need to be really, we need to take really care about this issue. So the longer we wait to all of this, it will be the worse. So we need to act as soon as possible. And our goal must be to provide everyone from the earliest ages and throughout their lives a framework that allows him or her to advance as far as he or she can and as far as he or she wants. So I think it's really, really important that we can provide this access to these skills, reskills, and lifelong learning to everyone. And it has to be something that it does not affect depending on where you come from or as I said, your age or your gender or whatever. I think it's really important that we do it for all. So that's my initial speech, and then I'm really open to answer the questions, Francois. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alicia, for these opening remarks, and I invite everyone in the audience to keep submitting questions in the chat or on our Facebook streaming. You've mentioned the impact of COVID and especially on young people, and it's widely studied and shown that it has a tremendous impact, especially when it comes to their educational environment. It created a lot of anxiety among young people when it comes to future prospects. Imagine you are 18 years old in 2020, like it's the moment you are supposed to transition towards either employment or higher education. How do you feel about that? And you've hinted at the importance of lifelong learning in this regard, but maybe in your role as a president of a youth movement, what are the views of young people, and what role can youth organizations play in this regard to when it comes to lifelong learning?
So thank you, Francois, for the question. I think is a really good question. So I think that young people are the basis for sustainable economic and social prosperity in Europe. However, as it happened in 2008, we were also the hardest hit in terms of employment and mental well-being during the COVID-19 crisis. Anxiety, as you mentioned, comes not only because of the disruption in education, but mainly due to the lack of employment, financial and educational prospects in the longer run. So you can have the best education, but unless you have access to quality traineeships and jobs opportunities, you will have no future. So we are in front, as I always say, we are in front of the best skilled generation, but there is still a lack of opportunities for all of us. So the current generation, as I said, is the highly skilled. Therefore, I think that skilling, reskilling, upskilling, and also the lifelong learning cannot be the only answer to the lack of jobs for young people. We have to advance into job security. However, in a world where change is becoming the norm, lifelong learning must become also the rule for all and not just for a few privileged ones, as I mentioned before. So learning is not only about academic subjects. We are all constantly learning. Every time we develop a new skill or find something out we put previously and that we didn't knew before. So as one grows up, one realizes there are so many development opportunities, and these opportunities will help to achieve new qualifications and personal achievements, to discover new interests, and to boost employability, salaries, or self-confidence. So I think that lifelong learning, as long as it comes with tools to ensure good employment prospects and also job security, that is also really important, is the best way to ensure young people that they will be able to be the best professionals they can be in this case. So that would be the message or the views that I see as president of a youth organization.
Thank you very much, Alicia, for highlighting all these elements, the question of job security. Building on what you said and also for what the audience is bringing, I would like maybe to pass the floor back to the minister and specifically a question about job security and answering the challenge of our times. We have the green transition, we have the digital transition, and it seems that often when people hear about reskilling, they often hear about IT skills. You need to be ready for the digital world. But how can we ensure that that people feel confident enough to take trainings for skills that will answer the challenge of the green transition? Minister, what's your take on that? And also feel free to react to what Alicia just said.
Thank you. As Alicia mentioned, we have to take care that education, reskilling and upskilling is not only for the privileged people, so that everybody has easy ways to reach skilling possibilities. And of course, we have to now be careful that we can ensure that everyone has the chance to develop also their skills to meet these requirements of greener future. So, and also the digitalization that is going on, so that they can also find their place in the changing work market. And of course, here we have to pay attention, especially to those that have less education and are underrepresented in adult education, and find in a better ways these groups, and also encourage them to reach these lifelong learning possibilities. So it means that here the workplaces have really a great role to play, because they reach these people in the normal environment, and that is also very important that it happens there in the workplaces, to find people and to encourage people to learn, to education. So then we have people that are outside the workforce, unemployed people, and also they can be in employment services, but I think we need to find better ways to reach people, and it has to happen in close cooperation with the communities, with hobby associations, workplaces, schools, and other welfare services, so that the possibilities are open everywhere in normal life. And it is also important to reach people in situations and settings that are relevant to them. And also we have to be able better to make tailored educational programs to different people in different situations, and make sure that they have real possibilities also to participate to education. For instance, we have immigrant women in Finland that don't speak Finnish or Swedish, our national languages. They have small children, so we have also planned programs for them where they can go to language education and take their kids with, and the children are taken care of during the mothers are in participating in those courses. So there are many ways that we can make this smoother and fix it better to the normal life that people are living.
Thank you very much, Minister. Alicia, do you would like to react to that or to build on those?
Yes, I'm unmuted. Okay, so, well, I think that these kind of initiatives are quite interesting and quite positive, the ones that the minister has explained of what they are doing in Finland. For example, the last one that she explained, I think is really a good idea in terms of helping people that is not speaking the official language of the country, that needs to communicate for living there, and that has a family and needs the time to be with the family, and also to do this kind of learning. So I think it's also important to build this bridge between the skills, the educational part, and also the way you take care of your family, the conciliation part, mostly for women, because we are the ones mostly in charge of this care in the families. And I think it's also important that we could have this opportunity to reskill ourselves, to to improve our knowledge in several aspects. And I think also that a part of security, the job security that I was talking in the previous question, I think it's also important to build this bridge through the educational part and also the conciliation part, as we try to do also with jobs and conciliation. So I think it's also a good point to raise this debate inside the institutions, because I think it's really important, because we also need to have the chance, mostly now that we have these difficult transitions that are a challenge in the end, that for sure our governments at the European level and local and regional level, we will put all our efforts to make these transitions fair and just for everyone. But I think also this point on the conciliation part, I think is a good point that it needs to be raised, because it's not talked that much, and it needs to be taken into account and in a very serious way.
Thank you, Alicia, for highlighting this as well. As we're gonna need to slowly wrap up this conversation, there's so much to unpack there, obviously. I will ask you a question to both of you, which maybe can be a springboard for you to provide concluding remarks at the same time. I think we have understood that the question of lifelong learning is, on the one hand, answering to big megatrends, also climate change, digitalization, demographic changes, this all reskilling, which is affecting the very own nature of work, which the commissioner touched upon as well in his intervention. And also the minister highlighted the importance of all part of society to get together to answer to these challenges. What policy change connected to the question of lifelong learning should also be addressed in order now to ensure a quality and inclusive labor market in the next decade? This is my open question for you to conclude on. I will start with the minister, if that's okay.
Yes, I think that the most important issue is that in the societal, in the level of society, everybody has a common view of the importance of education, and when that is accepted, so the employers, employees, the educational institutions, municipalities, communities, all these stakeholders together work to the same aim. And when we come to workforce, working people, of course, the workplace is the most important. What is the atmosphere in the workplace? Is it strategy in the company level that the company wants to support, that their employees get education, can keep their quality of work by reskilling, upskilling themselves, and so on. So I mean that this is not a question of only certain programs that are taken, but it is the way of thinking, how we see this question, that is the most important. Of course, we need legislation, we need funds to fund to finance the living during the education. We need also legislation that guarantees the safety to the worker, to keep the workplace during education, and so on. So there has to be many things to be done, but I would emphasize the workplace and the employer's role in this, so that they encourage and they find those people that most need reskilling and upskilling.
Thank you very much, Minister. Alicia.
Well, I think that there is many legislation to be done during these transitions, and one of the points that we need to look for is this point of education, of upskilling, reskilling, the lifelong learning. I think is really important. The commissioner mentioned two points that are going to come in the next months at the European level. But I think it's really important also the point that when you are in a workplace and you need to reskill or upskill in this place, that the time that you spend doing this skilling needs to be part of the time you are working. I mean, you cannot be 8 hours working and 4 hours studying for this same place. In the case of the transitions, when you are going to change your place of work, because many of them some of them are going to disappear and some of them are going to be created, I think that the enterprises also need to provide this kind of skills on digital and green transitions, even if they are going to change the kind of enterprise they are going to be. So I think that there are many challenges in front of. There are many things we need to improve and we need to create. And the most important ones are this kind of legislation that provides people the way they can upskill and reskill and have this learning for all their lives, in order to have good professionals. In the end, is to have good professionals in our working places, and also to protect them from the time that they are working and also studying, let's say, for these new kind of jobs.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and let me thank you very much, both of you, Minister Tuula Haatainen and MEP Alicia Holmes, for the very passionate conversation we just had. We have highlighted the progressive values of education, solidarity, and tackling inequalities, while addressing the challenges of our time, such as climate change and the digital transformation of our society. So very much thank you for this. This conversation could be continued and will continue, and we hope at FEPS to continue engaging with you. And last but not least, it's my pleasure now to give the floor for concluding remarks to the President of the Foundation for European Progressive Studies, Maria João Rodrigues, for closing the event. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, François, and many thanks, Minister Tuula Haatainen and MEP Alicia Holmes. It was great to listen to you, and this is now my role to conclude this interesting workshop by saying a few things I think we need to have in mind when wrapping up everything that happened over the last 2 hours. Look, we are certainly going to the biggest transformations of our lifetime. This green transition combined with the digital revolution and changing everything in the way we live, the way we work. And we know these will bring about new jobs. This also will close several jobs. And many things are impossible to predict precisely right now. Nevertheless, we know that somehow everybody should be prepared to update their skills on a much more regular basis. And we need to recognize that our education and training systems are not prepared for this. So somehow we need to imagine new economic and education and training systems working in a different way. Now, this is exactly why the right to lifelong learning was enshrined as the #1 in the European Pillar of Social Rights. And we should assume that lifelong learning as a right is the equivalent to universal right to primary education introduced in the 19th century, to universal right to secondary education introduced in the 20th century, and now here we are in the 21st century enshrining and creating a new social right. In fact, a new social right and a new duty. And is also very meaningful that in the Porto Summit, one of the 3 targets adopted to implement the social pillar was the 60% of access, also for adult learning. This means a large-scale effort, social investment in Europe, in all member states. Let me tell you, this was not easy to arrive to this point, because as Enrico Letta was saying, it's very important to recall Delors' commitment to spread lifelong learning, a big fight for many decades in Europe. And a second mark was with the Lisbon strategy in 2000, when finally member states accepted to discuss this as a European policy, but the tools were still too weak. Then the Lisbon Treaty, which was updating somehow, but keeping education as an area where the European Union still has weak competencies. And now with the social pillar, we can move forward and translate these into more precise commitments. That's why it's great news that Commissioner Schmit is announcing that the European Commission will present very soon this recommendation for the Council on on the individual learning account as a big piece of a larger reform of our education and training systems. These reforms needs to be undertaken. They will involve the entire education and training systems in our countries. But this new idea of an individual learning account, building on the experience of some countries, is really promising, because this is based on people's initiative. Beyond the compulsory or collective learning programs, this new tool is offering a possibility for each of us to take the initiative to look for new upskilling or reskilling. And this is really promising, provided this is supported by a good guidance, by a good certification, by a good time sharing on working time and learning time, and also by a good sharing of the way to finance this, because somehow this will be financed by individuals themselves when they accumulate their rights in their learning accounts, but this should also be co-financed by employers and by the public authorities. So this is really promising. This is a piece of a new updated education and training system. And let me conclude by saying that this also gives new ideas on the kind of European citizenship we need to develop on the ongoing Conference on the Future of Europe, because I believe that to be European citizen should also involve this right, universal right, to update skills by counting on new European instruments. So we are preparing these broader content for European citizenship. And yes, the individual learning account is really a great proposal. So many thanks to the authors, to the researchers of this big initiative, and many thanks to Jacques Delors Institute, many thanks to FEPS team. And let's go on. Working on this issue will become certainly a central one. Thank you for your attention.